Game design as an endeavor is about a conversation, and it's the conversation that you're having with the player. And in fact, it's that conversation that separates games from everything else.
What's nice about Unreal Engine is that it gives you the tools to work in so many different aspects and kind of delve deeply into each one. But if you are more like myself, you can at least accomplish what you're trying to do without needing to be a master of any one.
Hey, welcome back to Brain Arcade. I'm here with Chris Knauer, who is a new acquaintance of mine. And with that in mind, Chris, I'm going to let you introduce yourself, and then we'll talk a little bit about how we met.
Hey, thanks, Chris, for the intro. As you said, my name is Chris Knauer. I'm new to the video game development world. I come from the world of screenwriting, specifically TV, one-hour dramas, where I've worked as a script coordinator for Paramount Plus and Netflix in the past. And recently I've turned my attention to game design so that I can create my own stories and present them to the world.
That's awesome. So, by the way, I get this kind of request all the time. Somebody will introduce me to somebody and I'll be like, oh boy, another person who wants to get into video games. You know what I mean? And I try to be encouraging, but I also try to make sure that I'm very flatly honest about the challenges. And so it was interesting to me, and we definitely get a lot of people who want to come over from, TV or movies and stuff. But the thing that I'm usually gauging is where their heart is and where they want to be and like how they want to tell video games. But so tell me a little bit about how you and I got connected.
So the WGA hosted a panel at their headquarters specifically about narrative video game storytelling and how that could appeal to writers in the film and TV world.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the panelists was Connie Brameyer, who is an industry titan and veteran and has been doing it for a long time. So I was introduced to her through asking a question at the panel, and through another conversation with her afterwards on LinkedIn. She directed me here to Chris, who she said was one of the best mentors in the game and knew a lot about everything, and we were able to connect.
So actually, in your TV career, have you worked on anything that people would know? That you can talk about? Don't cross any of your NDAs or anything. Yeah.
Sure thing. So most recently I worked on that Paramount TV series, Bass Reeves, Lawman Bass Reeves. Prior to that, I worked on a Netflix show called Friends from College. And then between those, I worked on some shows that never saw the light of day, which is a very real situation in that industry currently.
It happens in games a lot more than people think too. We call it vaporware. There's even a term for it, right? And that term vaporware has existed as long as I've been in games. Like it's just the things get done and it never ships. So Bass Reeves, I've had that on my watch list forever, but just haven't gotten to it. That's a fun story, and I really enjoy the idea that I like the story that it wants to tell, but now I have to go see it to see, how it executed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a huge passion for history in that era, and that even comes through in the game that I'm designing now, which focuses on more of that Western world, and a lot of the language and culture kind of comes through in this game as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. And actually, you've shown me not to spoiler alert, but I've seen some of your materials already, but that it's super clear that stuff comes through as far as the history goes. And there's an interesting side conversation there. So I worked on the Medal of Honor games. I would not consider myself a big history buff or even whatever, but the endeavor on those games was always to present history as a reward. As if for the curious, there is history here to be picked up. So do you feel the same way? Are you specifically all about the late 1800s and cowboy culture and is that your focus, or do you like other history?
Not necessarily. I mean, I love all history. That era is very fascinating in a lot of ways because I think there's a lot that the average person doesn't know about that era. Bass Reeves, the series, actually does a great job of showing some of the really interesting details about that time. My specific area of interest is actually early 1800s, right after the U.S. was formed. So I've written a couple of scripts about that era when, we founded a new country, but then we kind of had to decide what type of country we were going to be on a global scale. And so there's a lot of interesting negotiation about Are we going to have a big military? Are we going to be like strong in our negotiations? Are we going to
Oh,
like
interesting.
try to deal with other countries on their level? So
Uh-huh.
really interesting, very nerdy type stuff. But
Yeah, right, right.
yeah,
I would love to talk with you off camera about that stuff at some point. And you're in LA, we can do a history day. I'll drive down and we'll have coffee,
we'll do it.
and I'll give you all kinds of weird World War II trivia to noodle along. Actually, so there were things in Medal of Honor that I didn't include that were historically accurate because I didn't think they were. So here, when you're talking about historical entertainment, there's a couple of different things that you have to deal with. And one of them is the common knowledge mythology of that time and what people understand coming in, because they'll, even those with some knowledge will come in with things that are just inaccurate or not wrong or whatever. And so, like, case in point, when you're watching Saving Private Ryan and Tom Hanks jumps off the Higgins boat and he's got his Thompson submachine gun and it's in a plastic bag. A lot of people didn't like that, threw a lot of people because they're like, we had plastic in World War II, right? And it was like relatively new, like not only that, see-through plastic in a bag form. Like it was, it was like, it seemed like the technology, because you think of World War II is so long ago that like you're unsure about what was available then. But like, never mind the fact that like all the weird secret stuff, like experimental shit that we were working on at all times. So
yeah, absolutely.
did you find that to be the same thing? Like when you were doing Bass Reeves, was there like, there are things that you wanted to include, but then you're like, I don't think anybody's gonna buy it?
Yeah, there are certainly aspects of it where everybody thinks of like the Wild West as being like ghost towns, and of course what I'm working on now isn't going to alleviate anyone of that idea. However, like the time when Bass was like working in like the Indian Territory of Oklahoma, or what would become Oklahoma, there were like very large cities, and it was like quite advanced, and there were like good public education systems, and so it wasn't this like like ramshackle cottages and dusty streets. Like people were pretty advanced then, and so but people don't really associate that era and that type of story with that environment, so that was always at odds.
Or even like when you say a Western town or like Western, like something in Oklahoma at that time, you immediately think like one street town, like 10 ramshackle buildings, like, you know what I mean? Like, and you're not really thinking about how society actually works, which is like, once people settle in a place, they start to expand, they start to, they bring family, they bring friends, they like, they start to build up, and like build up means infrastructure means bigger buildings, it means plumbing, it means, you know what I mean? Like all of these improvements start to happen, and it's almost like watching a time lapse of like Sim City or something. So, okay, so now to the game. You and I started talking about narrative in games, and I know that you listened to the Joe Cassander episode. And it's really crazy how many of these episodes I've done that are narratively related. And narrative is super important in games, but it's not like it has to go with the actual, the rest of the game. It's part of a whole. But in thinking about that, and I've seen your game, it made me ask a couple of questions. And the questions were, all right, before you get too far into this, right, I need to know your motivations. What is it? What do you want to get out of this? Because it's not an easy road to switch to games from something else. It's not impossible, but it's definitely not glamorous. And so, talk to me a little bit about that. Like you wrote me some very, very thoughtful answers, but if you could just recap some of that of like, hey, why games now? Right.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the linking piece between my work as like a screenwriter and then getting into Unreal Engine was that I wanted to create something from start to finish that could be a finished product. Because when you work as a screenwriter, 9 times out of 10, or really 99% of the time, your work is never going to be seen on screen or by anyone. Your finished product as a writer is generally a black and white text on a page. And a screenplay is not even a fun document to read. So it's not even something you can really distribute to other people as like a fun form of entertainment.
Right.
So
here, let me share this with you.
Exactly. Like it's not fun.
Yeah.
It's like asking someone to read your code. It's like there's a
Sure.
finished product that code goes toward, and like that is interesting. But reading the code itself is going to be very boring. And that's how most screenplays are too. They're kind of like the code that eventually becomes the
Yes.
final product.
There's strict formatting. There's pretty accepted syntax and grammar that you use that are like, it's its own language, screenwriting.
Exactly.
And so, you know, what's interesting about that though is I do enjoy reading in that way. Like, I'm not really much of, like, I don't mind reading prose, but like I've got so much training at reading design docs, technical docs, etc., that like screenplays for me are like easy peasy for me to read. And like but the other part of it is like I have a very visual mind's eye. So when I read screenplays, they actually come to life for me. So I do have fun reading screenplays, and part of that fun is while I'm reading, thinking about framing or how I would do it or how I would build it, or like how would I build this in Unreal, or like that's all going on sort of on the side or the background. So like, you know, don't sell screenplays short. Like I do enjoy reading them, but I will say though that having read like quote unquote finished screenplays and then seeing what's on screen, the difference between the finished screenplay product and then what actually gets shot is still like 25 to 50% different, because the realities of the physical set or whatever, right?
Absolutely. Unless like for TV and film, the screenplay is kind of just 1/3 of the process. Like the
Right.
production itself and the editing have equal weight.
Right.
And so that was the connective tissue, was that, you know, a script doesn't really feel like a finished part of a whole. It's really just one part of the process. And so I wanted to see if I could use Unreal Engine to just take some short films that I've written, or even just the first couple pages of some of my scripts, see if I could translate that into like a short film using Unreal Engine. And the answer for the most part was like, yes, but also as an individual creator without a lot of skill in the Unreal world, I could only get it to about like 60% of how a short film should look, not something that was really terribly valuable or interesting on its
Or
own.
polished. Yeah.
Exactly. Like that final 40% would be so much more work than I was capable of to get it to be actually meaningful. So it was a good introduction to like what was capable within that, especially as just an individual creator.
Sure.
But because of that process, I started seeing like, oh, well, I probably need to learn a little bit of blueprint scripting so that I can like trigger some events in the cinematics and sequencer. And then it's like, oh, well, that part is kind of fun too. And then, of course, that just slowly kept building on itself until it was like, actually, just making a whole video game might be the key to kind of getting a finished product that incorporates that like 60% cinematic quality. It doesn't have to be, you know, like Final Fantasy: The Spirits Within, or you know, some like high scale Pixar finished rendered project. It can be within the engine and it'll feel more naturalistic, and you can tie gameplay into it to create a more narrative experience.
Right, right. So to jump directly off of that, of adding the interactivity part. So video games, and this leads into probably the second part of your email where we're talking about art and artistry, etc. So I want to dig into that a little bit. So here's my current stance is like, game design as an endeavor is about a conversation, and it's the conversation that you're having with the player. And in fact, it's that conversation that separates games from everything else. So movies, TV, books, all of those are linear, number one. And two, you are presenting fully fleshed or formed ideas without interaction in a way that's supposed to provoke thought or whatever. And so like clearly the art is in the presentation of, or the execution of the ideas. The difference in games is that you actually are having a conversation in that in real time, the audience is interacting with you, right? But the difficulty is being a bit of a time traveler as far as like a time wizard, and understanding or limiting the amounts of interaction that they have to tell you things both about them, but how you should guide them through the rest of it, right? And so your head can explode in the geometric like possibilities of like potential trees of what people can do, and this is where the limitations come in. And the artistry of video game design is actually It's not about the execution and the telling of what you're doing. It's really about the execution and did you elevate a conversation, right? And so it's tough. Games can be art. Not all games are art, but they have that potential, right? So
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, to go into a little bit of what you were talking about, that email exchange that we had leading into this, I
mhm.
discussed how, like, when I went to film school, I was taught that, like, film is considered like the highest art because it combines basically every other element of artistry up to that point, which included like photography or like theater, stage acting, um, music, composition, like dance, ballet, like choreography. All of
Mhm.
these elements kind of combined into one art form, and you kind of had to have mastery of all of those elements in order to create this higher art. And since then, I do feel like video games have surpassed it in the sense that it includes all of those things now, in addition
Oh,
to player control, which that connection and, like you said, conversation between the art and the person who's enjoying it, it's a much more active level of conversation. Whereas a movie or a TV show, I would consider passive, especially nowadays where a lot of people unfortunately like watch a TV show while also looking at their phone the whole time because they can kind of passively receive that level of
right.
storytelling, whereas something with a video game requires engagement, attached to the media that
Mhm.
they're consuming. And so that element of it, I think, is really appealing as well, in that it like really forms a stronger bond between the storyteller and the person receiving the story.
Yeah, I generally agree, but I stay away from all absolutes. There are definitely games that I can play while also reading my phone. So, so that's interesting because I don't think in competitive way with other mediums anymore. I think I used to a little bit because late '90s, early 2000s, we had a real like little brother complex in games. In fact, that like games weren't making as much money as movies. They were considered like a lesser art, right? Like the pinnacle of games was, or the pinnacle of entertainment was making movies. And then several things happened since then, which is the resurgence of TV due to streaming, right? Or like,
Mhm.
or at least the serialized format, or the miniseries, or basically stretching things out instead of the 90-minute like summer action popcorn film. And then the other thing is games not only surpassed movies in financially, budgets are sometimes bigger than most movies, but also the revenue is sometimes much bigger than whole sections of the entertainment industry. But the ability to tell nuanced and complex stories and have interaction, I'm not going to disagree with you, but I'm just going to say that I'm not going to hold the whole like total industries up against each other and make a judgment call. But I would say that like, yeah, I think you have a pretty strong argument there in that my career has been like a good at everything, but not a master of none, like sort of a jack of all trades, but plus plus, right?
Yep.
And so I don't know that any like that's not a common pattern anymore because everybody specializes. But for sure, I've had to learn all kinds of stuff that I didn't actually. It's the reason I didn't go back to school is because I realized I couldn't create an undergrad curriculum for myself that didn't put me into something like double the amount of credits needed to graduate, right?
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
because I realized how much I had to know, and it really just came down to, I guess, the day I stopped learning is the day I stopped making games.
Yeah, and I would describe myself similarly as like a generalist or jack of all trades, where I'm interested and like reasonably proficient at a large amount of things, but not
Mhm.
terribly specialized or incredible at any one given area. And what's nice about Unreal Engine is that it gives you the tools to work in so many different aspects,
Sure.
and kind of delve deeply into each one. But if you are more like myself,
So,
you can at least accomplish what you're trying to do without needing to be a master of any one.
so that's super interesting. Most people are really overwhelmed with how much you can actually do with Unreal and have a hard time. They get like analysis paralysis, right? So they can't home in on how to do the thing they want to do. But the antidote to that is to pick things that are appropriately scoped for your knowledge. And so you started with trying to make a film, and then you moved into like, well, I'm going to make a narrative game, not a lot of interactivity, and like you're taking the right steps. And I would recommend that other people who are thinking about getting into games or doing Unreal emulate what you're doing, which is like, I know X. How do I now translate the thing I know through this new tool and pick off, doable, what seem like doable projects, and treat it as a learning experience, right? And then evaluate it when I get to the end of that on whether or not it's viable for something else. But the activity of doing or learning is the point. Sometimes people get so target focused on the product that they drive themselves mad or batty, right? Oh, footnote: when starting out learning a new engine, never start on a passion project. Start out with something that you don't mind throwing away, because you will learn so much that it will change how you build stuff. My second piece of this is, most people that I talk to who are like, I want to get into games, I want to do XYZ, and da 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 da, don't even do 1/20th of what you've already done in Unreal, right? Like they really don't. Like they just don't. Like, my only feedback on the little like video trailer that you showed me was like, this is a great tech demo. It's appropriate for length, but now you need to cut one that's 30 seconds.
Oh, absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Now you need to cut a trailer,
Yep.
right? And like, but I understood more about your project in that 6 minutes than I think I would have gotten from other stuff. Do you have a design document?
I have a one pager. I have kind of just like a very messy internal document that I use that I would not want to show the world.
Sure.
But it, to kind of keep things at least in scope, because especially with, this process of mine, scope creep is such a very real aspect of it. Everything I want to do is doable, which I think is another thing that I've learned about this process, is that like with enough time, and if you hit yourself, like if you hit your head against the wall enough times, you can achieve basically anything you want to do in Unreal Engine. It can be very challenging though. But knowing that you can do something does mean that the scope creep is a very real problem.
Well, knowing that it's possible is a dangerous thing, because then you're willing to hit your head against the wall 10,000 times to get there. If you're too stubborn. This is also why I say don't start with a passion project, is because the pain that you're willing to submit to in getting to that target is your threshold is much higher than if it's something you have no sort of real, like it's a quote unquote throwaway project. Then it becomes much easier to you know what, I have a thing I would love for you to evaluate and work on as well, like in a sort of a fair trade sort of an idea.
Yeah.
But now that I think about it, I'm like, oh, you know what? I need to not build that first. I need to go build like something, like, you know what I mean? Like I need to go build like tutorial stuff or whatever, because I'm trying to learn Godot now. And like get back into Unreal under the hood. Like I know Unreal pretty well, but like it's like Spanish. Like you could drop me off in Mexico City right now, I'll get around. Like I'll be able to go to my hotel, eat, and go to the bathroom would be fine, right? Like easy peasy. But I'm not gonna have any conversations. That's how Unreal is for me right now. It's like I can get around, but like it's changed so much every iteration that I haven't been keeping up with, the day-to-day grammar of how it works, that I need to drop back into it, especially because 6 is coming. Maybe next year. Maybe like basically like you can hear the rumblings of Unreal 6 in the future. So would you be interested in me helping out with your design doc?
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
I would love to show you how to take what you think is not usable, and both tell you why it is usable, and then help you clean up the format so that it's something that you can use for other stuff. And the most important thing about a design doc, so like I'm super happy to hear that you did something that you think is messy, but it helps you keep track of scope. That means you have a little bit of a producer's hat on sometimes, or like at least that capacity. But the other piece of that is you don't have to actually worry about the formatting or writing of a lot of these other docs until you involve other people.
Right.
Like you can use or write how you want to do it all on Post-its. Go ahead. You want to do it all in Miro? That's fine. It doesn't matter. It only becomes important once you start, like, if you add an engineer and an artist, all of a sudden you now have 2 more communication vectors, and you need to rejigger the information in a way that's understandable to both, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Greetings from my bath, festive friends. The holidays are overwhelming, but I'm tackling this season with PayPal and making the most of my money. Getting 5% cash back when I pay in 4. No fees, no interest. I used it to get this portable spa with jets. Now the bubbles can cling to my sculpted but pruny body. Make the most of your money this holiday with PayPal. Save the offer in the app.
Ends 12/31. See paypal.com/promo terms. Points can be redeemed for cash and more. Pay in full subject to terms and approval. PayPal Inc. and MLS 910457.
From Curtis 50 Cent Jackson.
Tommy back.
Yeah, I am.
And the executive producers of Power.
There's levels to this game.
Comes the final season of Force.
We're gonna have to be careful about our next move.
We get what we can now and take the rest later. This is gonna be the battle of our life. It's go time.
This is a dangerous life that I choose to be in with you.
Force.
Never bet against me, because I'm always winning.
Premieres November 7th, only on Stars and the Stars app.
So it's interesting. You have a game designer's heart. Where do you think that came from? Do you play games in your free time?
I do, and also just like from a very young age. I was thinking earlier about how I was playing like StarCraft 2, and there was within StarCraft 2 you could actually like generate your own maps, and you could actually like trigger events and like sequences. You could write your own mission brief so that like your sibling could play like a little custom game that you had developed. And that to me was always more fun than actually playing anything.
Oh, so you did use you used the StarCraft 2 map editor?
Yeah. And so
Oh,
I
that's
was
really
like
interesting.
very young, but I was
Yeah.
like already playing around with that type of like self-developed experience. And I kind of just kept that on the back shelf, and it wasn't anything that like
Right.
seemed terribly valuable. But like
So-
from a very young age, I already was enjoying just that kind of aspect of control and creativity.
Well, but also finishing the communication loop of sharing a map with your brother and having them, or your sibling, or your friend, or your or whatever, like a close acquaintance, having them play it and telling you and giving you feedback and then adjusting. Like that's the game design loop.
Yep.
Is like that's the communication I'm talking about. Is like, here's the thing. Do you like it? Oh, I like it, or I don't like it, or here's how do I make that better? Oh, how do I, and that loop is core to what it means to be a game designer, even though many times, especially on larger projects, you lose sight of the audience a little bit because you're filling out checkboxes, right? But what's interesting about StarCraft 2? So back in the day, like my first job, I was a tester at Blizzard. So their development philosophy at the time was very different. So what you were playing with is extremely close to the actual tool that they used to build the game.
Wow.
Right. So without knowing it, you were literally getting game design skills that were directly applicable to making RTSs, at least. Right. Because back in that day, most games like get built. You build the core, and then you build single player, and then multiplayer is either done by another team, or you take like basically it's solved as part of a whole project. But the development philosophy back then at Blizzard was very specific. Build the level editor, start building levels, then make units, play multiplayer, balance multiplayer, make it all correct. And then once you have a target that's well balanced and people are going to enjoy competing in, take all of those elements and then make a single player game out of it. Right. And so it was not backwards, but it was prioritized differently. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
And the development pitfall you run into going for single player first and then multiplayer is you'll end up with 2 different tunings or balances, because when you build single player that way, you're building for maximum impact to a single person. Whereas, anyway, all of that stuff, when I said they built the map editor first, it continued to get improvements, but it was generally built with the idea that the public was going to get it. So everybody on the team would use the same map editor as what was going to ship, or usually a little bit clunkier version, but it would eventually get polished and shipped. So you're honing your game design skills at an early age on a real tool, and with real considerations, probably more polished than a lot of people get to build games with in the first place.
Yeah, I mean, it was impressive tech. I remember even at the time, I was like, oh, it's like a trigger box. And then when I came back into Unreal Engine, I was like, oh, these are the same kind of just like
Okay.
collision trigger boxes. And now I can trigger events and sequences. And I remember,
So that's okay. That's super interesting because when I started watching, a video of your gameplay and stuff, I was like, man, like this seems like it came to you much easier than it does to most people. I think that's why, because the concept of like, so a trigger that makes something happen is really just event-based programming, right? This event happens, thus XYZ, right? So, when you start to think in that way, that helps you quite a bit once you get into a game engine because you start to think in like what's actually happening in the level and how do I control that or what am I going to do with it? And so the idea being that you have formed certain like neural pathways into thinking that way. And by the way, a lot of game engineers don't necessarily think this way, right? Like coders do not think this way. This is a game designer thought process, which is timelines and events, and making things like thinking about what the presentation is, right? Regardless of animation or art or whatever. So, okay, what's next for your product? What are you going to do with it?
yeah, I mean, that's the most exciting and probably the most daunting. And we'll figure some of that out. But I think the main thing is that I want to at least get a finished product that I can release in a way that other people can actually find it, download it, and play it. I don't have necessarily any monetary hopes or aspirations for this project. I mainly just want to prove that I can finish a project of this scale, have it done the proper way, check all the boxes that are necessary, get it released in a format that shows that it's a finished working product that works on other people's computers besides my own, which I think will be an important aspect of it, which I haven't tested too much yet. So we'll see how all that goes.
Sure. Well, I volunteer to be your first tester for sure.
Perfect.
So now to call back to an earlier part of the conversation, where does this fit into your art paradigm? Like how much of what you're making is art versus, well, I don't know, anything else?
I mean, I think what's interesting to note is that like nobody is making me do this. I don't have any necessarily like monetary aspirations from this. It's just that I have an innate like creator's artistic sensibility where I will be worse off in my mental health if I'm not creating something of some scale. So if it weren't a video game, it would probably be a novel. Since I've already kind of done the screenwriting world, I do love writing and I love world building. But the kind of endless challenge that video game design creates is such a fun well of creativity that I can always draw from it. It's never empty. And so that aspect has really made me dig my teeth into like the video game world because I can keep going, I can keep progressing. And like I said earlier, if you can imagine it, there's usually a way that you can make it happen within the editor, as you're building the project.
Or at least imply that it happened, or like we could talk about that later. Like there's a lot of smoke and mirrors and some magic tricks and stuff.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
Comes from just experience. So yeah, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that you can get into to get the feeling of something happening. So what's interesting though, and I want to call this out, is that you, as far as being a commercial project, you don't have. This is also one of the reasons why I totally am invested in what you're doing, is that you never once have said anything like, I am going to make the best thing ever that's going to win the lotto and make me a lot of money. Right. And so like your dreams are very grounded as far as what your expectations are. And I think you'll be surprised that the traction you will get by just finishing the thing will be much more than you have expectations for. The other part of this is I think you have a real chance to make something that at least is in the form of art because you're not thinking about monetization. And so the decisions that monetization considerations move you into definitely they don't always, they can move you away from making art. And art with a capital A, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the whole product is, a product that can be considered art. And by product, I mean little p product, not like capital P in a box. I'm gonna wrap up here in a minute because I do have to jump to something else. It's gonna be a little bit of a shorter episode. But here's where I want to go with this. You're gonna come back on at some point, but not till you and I finish a few things. One, I want you to send me your game design doc so that I can review it with you and you and I can sort of commit to working on it. I'm also working on some indie endeavors that I think you're a good candidate to jump into and be, give me feedback from, because you're not jaded by the industry, right? And you're also like, you're not, I mean, yes, you'd like to make a living at it, but that's not your current like number one focus right now. And I think that's an important, like you give me a different audience lens when you come from that angle. But the other thing is like, I'm going to help you finish this game. Whatever that means, we're going to finish it and then we're going to put it in the right distribution channel. There are many more than you think of. You do not have to go to Steam. You do not have to go to itch.io. You don't let's figure that out. But I'm glad that you're willing to just put that towards the end. Like, let's get to something that you're super happy with. And then one of the number one ways that I can help you is actually tell you when it's good enough. Right?
No, that
or
actually,
basically,
yeah, very helpful because, like I said, I will scope creep this thing until I never release anything.
It turns from like a super tight experience, and then it could turn into like, yeah, but then there's this side thing and this other thing, and it starts to turn into this multi-tentacled monster. And basically, like, I want to review what you're doing to keep it tight, because I think even your length expectations might be a little long, right? But I don't know yet. I need to play the whole thing, or at least like look at the design docs and what you've got planned. And you and I are going to put our production hats on and do a little bit of like waterfall scoping of like, what do you got? We don't have a ship date. We don't actually have a budget or anything. But what I want you to do is make something that's really tight. And by tight, I just mean like there's no wasted parts. Like,
yeah,
it's good to have replay value. But I think for this, that's maybe not necessary. It's by nature already a branching narrative, so there's going to have inherent you know what, that was fun, I'm going to try it again. But that's also an argument to keep it kind of on the shorter end.
Yeah,
because then people will be like, you know what, that wasn't too long, I'll just do it again. Or like, this is my favorite. It's like watching Goonies for the 100th time. You're just going to go back and do it, right? So on our next talk, though, we'll talk a little bit more about like who's your target audience, right? And stuff like that. But I've avoided those conversations in this call specifically because we haven't actually started talking about it as a product.
Right.
Right. And so like there is an artist consideration for, I want to reach people, but it's nice in general right now in that you want to reach people as you do in writing as human beings first. Right. And so like, I just kind of want to keep you centered there without getting into specific like demo targets or players like taxonomies or anything like that. It's really like, I'm trying to not spoil the sort of like alchemy that's happening on your side by giving you too many things to think about that are generally commercial concerns, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to help you with this. I think it might even be worth. Wait, do you have like? Are you social media savvy? Do you do things on the socials?
I have the socials, but leading into as we get closer to any type of release, I'm going to need to brush up and use all of my skills that I've been neglecting a little bit up till now.
I think it's worthwhile for us, you and I, to start doing something more like we need a regular commitment. So either weekly or bi-weekly, where we at least touch base and go, how are things going? What's happening? And the more open that we can be about that right now, the better. Like, hey, let's do it on Blue Sky or Twitter or Instagram or something like that, so that like what we're doing is the content. Right. It's like we're just that's where we're at. And, you know, you and I will clearly have off-channel communications, but like we should definitely be like, you know, start that conversation with me. I'm at Coffee But Cross everywhere. So just grab me and then we'll start doing this. And so that's what I'm going to tell the audience right now is like, you know, the two Chris's are going to make a thing. and we'll keep you on board. Follow all the socials, because if you care to see how it's going, we'll put there. And then I want you to come back and we'll do like, I don't know, like a quarterly update of progress and stuff like that.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that all sounds amazing.
But also, by the way, if you wanted to apply for narrative jobs, I think you have enough right now to make a demo enough to make you very competitive in the video game like hiring market, because you've actually done and made. Right? You're not just a writer; you're actually Unreal knowledgeable. So anyway, we'll talk about that offline as well. So there's not a whole lot of narrative jobs to get right now, but
Yeah.
I'll introduce you to a few people. Okay. All right. Thank you for coming on the show. And I will talk to you again. Brain Arcade is a Princess Hermit production, produced by Kyrene Kim, music and mixing by Jonathan Ontiveros. The podcast is hosted by me, Chris Cross. You can find me and my other endeavors at coffeewithcross.com.
5 years ago, I mentioned this Icelandic lost version of Dracula. Whatever happened with that?
It sent me down the biggest rabbit hole of my personal and professional life. Find out more in the new podcast, The Powers of Darkness from Or Whatever Movies.
Coming October 2025.
You deserve better health care, and so do we all. Medicine in America is a podcast that shares real stories of patients and doctors reshaping the future, because the revolution in care isn't coming, it's already here. Real stories, real change, a better future for healthcare.
Electricast. Electricast.